Hello, everybody. Welcome to BarMax webinar series here. This is our third webinar already. It just feels like we just got started, but here we are. This is our webinar on the multi-state essay exam. And you are here with BarMax, the top rated and always 100% socially distant bar prep company. And I'm your fearless leader today, Celeste Pagano-Bowles. I'm a graduate of Harvard Law School. I've worked as a lawyer and law professor. I taught contracts and property. And now I'm a BarMax instructor and tutor and content creator. So here we are. Today, we're going to talk about the multi-state essay exam, which is part of the bar exam in most U.S. jurisdictions. So I'm going to go through today what the exam is, how to format an answer. We really have strong recommendations about answer formatting and how to practice. Like, what's the best way of going about practicing for this portion of the exam? So those are kind of the three main topics I'll cover: what the exam is, how to format your answer, and how to practice. And if time permits, at the end, I will walk through a sample question with you and talk about how I would approach it. So that you will have successful approaches to the MEE yourself. Now, just housekeeping, you'll notice that this webinar has a chat feature, like all of the Zoom meetings that we've been all having ad nauseum, I'm thinking, the last few weeks. But it also has a Q&A. So here's the difference. The Q&A is where I want you to send me questions specifically about the MEE. I'm going to need you to help me stay on task because I have a lot to say about the MEE. So if you have questions about BarMax, about other sections of the bar exam, about your situation, put those in chat, because we have other panelists who are here like this, and people from BarMax, and including Mayron, will pop in and out, and they will be available to answer your other questions. So the ones in the Q&A, if they relate to the MEE, I'm going to try to answer them here. So here, let's see. As I said, it's part of the bar exam in most U.S. jurisdictions. You'll see on this slide, I think they're all showing that this is, a huge number of states and territories and the District of Columbia. Now you'll notice I've marked some of these with a star or an asterisk, and those are UBE states. The MEE, multi-state essay exam, forms 30% of the grade of the uniform bar exam. So uniform bar exam states are listed here with an asterisk, and I want to give a shout out to Ohio, because this next administration of the exam will be Ohio's first time using the UBE, and Texas will join us next February. But for the rest of you, I have stuff. We have separate information and videos for California and everyone else. If your jurisdiction doesn't have a star here, or if your jurisdiction is not listed for you, I'm compiling specific advice for non-UBE, non-California jurisdictions. And we're going to do that in a separate webinar on Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific, noon Central, 1 Eastern, like that. Okay, so that's on Thursday. You've probably gotten the invitation. This will be just us who are in the states here without an asterisk, or the states who are not listed. I actually live in a state that is not here because it doesn't even use MEE essays. So I'm having a session for all of you. We can say goodbye to our dear friends from New York and the other populous states that do use the UBE and focus specifically on your needs. I know that's early for my people in Hawaii. So Hawaii, I'm going to give you your spoiler right now. Hawaii, your state is the UBE plus one little section on Hawaii professional responsibility. It's 15 multiple choice questions that'll happen as soon as you get there on the first day of your bar exam, and the rest of your exam is the UBE. So how to prepare for that? Get your Hawaii Rules of Professional Conduct and any sample questions that you can get your hands on for that, and take BarMax's UBE course. So there, you don't have to be up at 7 in the morning on Thursday to see my other presentation. Now, every jurisdiction on this slide uses the multi-state essay exam, and that's our focus for today. Again, I want your specific questions about that in chat, and I will pause periodically, not in chat, I'm sorry, in Q&A, and I'll pause periodically and look at that. So what is the exam just overall? Well, the NCBE, in its current iteration, the exam consists of 6 essay questions written by the NCBE, the National Conference of Bar Examiners. You do it in 30 minutes each, 3 hours. There's a full 3 hours, and you can allocate the time any way you wish. But since the points are divided equally between all the questions, you have to keep yourself on track with the time. It's not that you see a question on your exam soft screen and then it disappears after 30 minutes or anything like that. You get 3-hour block to complete 6 questions, and we're recommending that you devote 30 minutes to each. Florida is not MEE. I just saw that come up, so I'm answering it. But Florida will be discussed on the thing I'm doing on Thursday. So some general essay writing advice from today might be helpful for you, but really what you need in terms of how to prepare, if you're in Florida or one of those other states, Indiana, where I live, you would want to be here on Thursday. I got to start ignoring chat, sorry. But there you go, Christina. That was an easy one, so I answered it. I told you I got to stay focused. All right, we're going to keep me focused. So UBE states use all 6 questions that are prepared for each exam. And other states may use 4 or 5. They'll cut some sometimes in order to make way for more state-specific material. Other states like Hawaii use all 6. Okay. So what does the MEE test? First of all, do they want you to know your state's law? That is always like makes people anxious. If you are in a UBE jurisdiction, your jurisdiction has agreed to judge you on your understanding of generally accepted legal principles. So this will be the same contracts law, the same tort law, the same property law that you see on the MBE, and it will be the general law of trusts and corporations and those sorts of things. We'll look at all the topics in a minute, but you don't need to know your state-specific distinctions to do excellently on the UBE. If you are in a state that uses MEE questions, but then doesn't call it a UBE exam, you may be responsible for some state distinctions. And again, Thursday we'll talk about how to prepare for that part, because we want all of you to succeed. We're going to just have the best batch of newly minted lawyers. Anyway, when you do these essays, they're going to want to see that you can identify the legal issues at play. Didn't I do the subjects? I'm sorry. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, here they are. I skipped a slide. I'm really going to work on staying on focus. You guys know I went 2 hours last time, and I have 2 hours, but I'm hoping we can get through this quicker because I always have a lot to say. Anyway, these are the subjects right here. what I call the big seven in my own notes and files that I've been teaching the bar exam for a while. I call the MBE subjects the big seven: civil procedure, con law. That's the federal rules of civil procedure, as we went over in the last webinar. Contracts, criminal law and procedure, evidence based on the federal rules of evidence, real property, and torts. So you will have 25 multiple choice questions in each of those subjects, guaranteed, all of you, whatever state you're in. But for each of them, you may also have an MEE essay. And then I've listed on the right the additional MEE subjects. NCBE does list them a little differently, but this is what the essays might cover. What NCBE calls business associations can really be broken down conceptually into agency and partnerships, which is one set of relationships, and corporations and LLCs, which is another. In recent years, we've seen corporations tested with LLC fact patterns. So students have to walk in and treat those, know about the formation requirements of LLCs and the formalities, but then in terms of the duties of the parties to each other, it looks very similar to a closely held corporation. Anyway, so we cover all of that in corporations and LLCs in our BarMax outline. Family law is family law. That's either going to be child custody issues or the distribution of assets on divorce, right? So who gets the kids or who gets the stuff? That's it. That's family law. For the most part, does grandma get to visit? These are some of the questions. Secure transactions, this is important to note. Secure transactions is Article 9 of the Uniform Commercial Code. Okay, you're familiar with the UCC. Article 2 is what deals with the sale of goods. So when you're talking about the UCC applying to a contracts question in a contract for the sale of goods, you're talking about Article 2. Article 9 is the part that addresses questions of like this. Somebody or some business incurs a whole bunch of debt and puts up collateral, right? So all of these debts are secured by an interest in personal property of the debtor. And then this person never pays anybody because it's the bar exam. So who gets what? Who owns a security interest in what collateral? It might sound a lot like mortgages. The only difference is, well, the law is different, but the difference in the fact patterns is that the collateral here is personal property. So it could be stuff, could be intellectual property, could be accounts, that sort of thing. That's all of Article 9. If you've taken a course called Commercial Paper that deals with Article 3 of the UCC, that is no longer tested on the UBE and no longer tested in most states. Again, we'll talk about specific states on Thursday, but Article 3 Commercial Paper notes, holder in due course, it can come up in property, but it was my least favorite subject, so I said a few hallelujahs when it was removed from the bar exam. So there you go. A secure transactions is a little bit more intuitively easy to follow. You just have to kind of learn some rules. Anyway, trusts and wills, again, the NCBE calls that decedents, estates, and future interests or something like that. And what that tests, those questions might test wills, they might test trusts, and they might test that whole future interest part of property. That, speaking of things that people don't always love in law school, that could be in one of those questions. And then finally, they list conflict of laws. Conflict of laws is the legal issue that comes up when you have two states involved in something. And then you have to figure out, well, which state's law is going to apply here? State A has this law, state B has that law. It will affect the outcome of the case because it's the bar exam. So you need to determine which state's law to apply using conflict of law principles. You will never see a question that is 100% conflicts of law. It will be conflict of laws. Sorry, I always say conflicts, and that's not right. Anyway, it's like it's written, conflict of laws. The question won't just test that. It will test that along with another subject. So it'll give you a family law question and then say, well, which state is going to determine, which state's law will determine this or that question, or it'll give you, a different kind of substantive law question, or even a civil procedure question, and then ask which state's law applies. That'll be one portion of it. When two subjects are tested together, we call it a crossover question. We've seen a question, it was not too long ago, that was torts and agency. It was mostly a torts question, but there were some principles of respondeat superior and apparent authority and that sort of thing. If you've taken some agency, then those things all sound familiar. That came up in a torts/agency crossover question. Another question was mostly a secured transactions question, but then suddenly part of this collateral got bolted down somewhere, became a fixture, and suddenly we needed to know some real property law. So it was a secured transactions question, but because there was a fixture, it had a property law component. So that was considered a crossover. You will not see 3 subjects tested. These are 30-minute essays. They're short. If they cram 2 subjects in there, the second subject is a small section of it, and they can't cram more than that. And then remedies. You see I have remedies listed here. It's not listed on the NCBE site, but as I explained in my last webinar on the MBE, remedies concepts, who gets what from the court, or what recourse is available through the court, damages or an injunction or punitive damages or whatever. It can be tested with contracts, with torts, or other topics. So then we get to the skills that the MEE is testing. As I said, general principles of law, unless it's a non-UBE state, you may need to know some state distinctions as well. And then the skills. The skills are identify the main legal issues that are relevant. Your goal is to identify and focus on specific issues. The MEE is not the place to vomit your outline. Here's what I mean. Contracts question. Right? Imagine you have a contracts question and it's about breach and remedies, right? You have to determine like which party breached, this one, did he repudiate, did this happen, blah, 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 and maybe a remedies component, right? So there's a lot to get into in that contracts question. But if you begin your essay with formation of a contract requires offer, acceptance, and consideration. You're right. You learned it the first week of law school, so did I. It doesn't belong in that essay. There was no formation issue. So you see what I mean by focus on that issue and identify the issue that's really the legal issues at play. If the parties aren't arguing whether they were originally in a contract or not, there's no formation issue. So if they're not worrying about it, you don't worry about it either. Okay, so those are my, and then, sorry, number 1, I was so important on issue spotting. Obviously, we're gonna go through that later. We're gonna talk about how to format your answer, but they want you to be able to state accurately the applicable rule, the rule that applies. And then big time, this is where most of your points are. Woo, let's give you some stars. Analyze the facts, okay? Use the facts and show how, the particular wrinkles of that fact scenario might affect the outcome. In other words, when you apply the rule, how do those facts matter? Okay, and then finally, we're going to go through this when we do a sample, because I picked a sample with a tricky question in it on purpose, even though I reached back in time a little to 2009 to get my sample. They can still do it, right? So I want you to keep your eye open, but always, always answer the question asked. You may see another issue that looks interesting, but if it doesn't help answer the question that you've been asked, then, you know, it may not belong there, right? So I'm going to take a little Q&A right now, and then I'll be jumping into my advice about how to prepare, how to practice. Well, no, first how to format your answer, and then how to prepare and practice. Okay. So if your Q&A question has to do with formatting or preparing, then I'm going to hold off on it because I'm going to answer that there, but I want to see general questions now. How on earth are we supposed to memorize the stuff that could be tested on the MEE? Jenna, with brute force cramming. I'm sorry, that's really mean. It's a mean and right answer, okay? The study method I'm gonna give will help a lot of that to stick. It'll make the material more sticky for you, right? But in terms of the actual sheer memorization of the rules, you'll wait until the last few weeks before the bar exam. You'll have your room papered with outlines and flashcards, and you'll be going through them on the toilet. I'm sorry, probably TMI, but I mean, whatever you got to do, right? You'll be really working those last few weeks to get that into your head. Simon, California does not use the MEE and New York does. That's the answer. California Bar has their own essays, a different format, longer. They're 1 hour essays. They have all this funky California law. So we have another instructor who will work with you guys in California on that. New York, what you get is today. The UBE, the Uniform Bar Exam, has been the bar exam for New York for some time. Do I have guidance on what subjects will be tested in July? I'm so glad you're asking, LaTanya, because I will answer it for you and everyone else. No, we don't play predictions. We know that there are websites that play predictions. Okay, there are also people who, you know, buy lottery tickets and whatever. We just don't want to go based on chance, right? We want you to be prepared in every subject, because if you start thinking, oh, well, you know, they did have a secured transaction question these last 2 times, so they're probably not going to test it again, and you don't study secured transaction, and it turns out they had a secured transactions question these last 2 times because they've decided it's really important. You know, like, we can't play their mind game. What we can do is prepare for all the subjects so that whatever comes your way, you're ready. I'm taking the California bar exam, and this is, it might be useful, Cassandra, but again, the answers you'll put in California will be more expansive. The questions are more expansive. So I would answer yours yes and no, right? Like, this is really focused on my MEE people. Is it true you only need to learn the basics for secure transactions? Yes. Yes. And again, when I go through my study method, Laura, I will show you how you know that. Let's see. So we don't do predictions, and yeah, NCBE is planning to come out with a lot of tests. And how does that impact your studying? I would say, again, learn everything and time yourself so that whatever the last 3 weeks before your exam is, that is when you are really cramming. Is that Swatanter? I think I may have mispronounced your name, but I wanted to acknowledge you. Anyway, does the UBE test negotiable instruments? No, negotiable instruments is the same thing as commercial paper. That's this, the stuff I said we didn't test. Thank you for giving me the other name for it. I call it commercial paper, but the other name for it is negotiable instruments. We don't need to know it. These are such great questions. Thank you, Greg. Okay, so you don't, Beatrice, I think you may have heard this answer earlier, but you don't need to state New York distinctions in the New York exam. Here's the thing with the UBE. Now that jurisdictions have agreed to this uniform exam, remember, these scores are portable. So New York has agreed to accept into practice somebody who gets a 266 on the UBE over in, another state. So since they're going to do that, it's not necessary to know all those distinctions. If you know an area of law, if you happen to know something, then write it. But first write, in some states this, in other states that, or in the majority rule, and then in New York, blah, blah, blah. You can write it, but you don't need to. If you just know, the majority, or this is what it is under the Uniform Probate Code, or, as applicable to the question, the general, widely applicable legal principles, if correctly applied and analyzed, will get you an excellent score on this exam. Oh, so Tammy, I am so sorry. The essays are not ranged from 158 and 133 are not essay exams scores in New York. Tammy, basically 5 on a New York, 50 on a New York essay is passing 50 or above. If you took the New York exam in current scoring mechanism, it's scored 20 to 80 and 50 is considered passing. Yeah, and you need we talked about this last time, but about 133 on the essays, about 133 on the MBE to pass the UBE anywhere. Anonymous, can I study solely based on the materials in BarMax? The answer is yes. I have found, Anonymous, that some students, foreign students in particular, have benefited from tutoring, but we do have people who have passed just using our BarMax materials. I had one student in France who was not a tutoring student of mine, but he reached out to me online with several questions, and he circled back and said, oh, I just passed the New York bar. I was delighted to hear from him. But then I had another student who I tutored from Australia, and she passed the New York bar. So absolutely, foreign lawyers can pass. I would say it's easier if you're from a common law country, because some of the doctrines look more familiar. Or, I'm working with a foreign lawyer now from a civil law country, but he has a US LLM. So, he's doing pretty well in terms of has had exposure to most of the doctrines. Anyway, these are really excellent questions. And do we know when they'll be released? It's usually pretty quick, Miriam. People order them from New York, order their own exam answers, and then one of our students sends it to us, so we get it even if it hasn't been officially released yet. So yeah, we should have those soon. So that's it. You guys are great with this Q&A. None of it was on the stuff I haven't talked about yet. Not too much. Anyway, so let's get back to how to format your answer. I'm kind of going out of order, right? I'm talking about writing your answer, and then I'm going to talk about studying. But come on, some of you need to know this, and then you got to go, right? You have to go get dinner or something, you got a kid who's only going to let you stay here so long. So let's get to the juicy stuff, right? Here's my number one advice. Remember that your graders are busy, okay? I had a colleague in Texas who graded bar exam essays. She would get all of the real property essays. She had a stack like this on her desk. Okay. She was also a full-time attorney. She had, meetings and deadlines and closings, and, we did a lot of transactional work. She had a lot of documents that needed to be reviewed and moved around, and a lot of phone calls that needed to be made, but she had this stack. So she was not lovingly and carefully reading each one. Now, I don't know, maybe she had more time than I would imagine, but my understanding is that graders give just a couple minutes to each essay. They just are going through to see, did they identify the right issue? Did they correctly state the rule? Did they correctly apply the facts? Boom, boom, boom. They're not looking for something beautifully written that is interesting. I mean, it needs to be clearly written, but it doesn't need to be, you know, something that flows off the page. Trust me, after she's read 200 of the same, you know, answers to the same question, nothing anybody writes will be interesting unless it's interestingly wrong, right? Unless it's really bad. So our whole goal is to make it easy for the graders to give you the points that you deserve for all this memorization I just told you you have to do. This is also why we suggest you not handwrite. Some people say, oh, you know, I type with 2 fingers, I type so slowly. It is so hard to maintain decent penmanship for 3 hours of straight writing. It's pretty much impossible. And then you've got to deal with your formatting issues, the fact that you may have written something wrong or put it in the wrong place. And then what do? Do you cross it out? You can't do all this, oh, go back and look at page 2 and stick this in there. No, they will not do that. They're just going to read through it start to finish. So handwriting will disadvantage you. Just because almost everybody uses ExamSoft now and they want to see something easier to read. They're not going to go, oh, I'm taking off 2 points because it's handwritten, but they will have more trouble deciphering your stuff. Most people handwrite about 30 words a minute. So teach yourself to type at least 30 words a minute and you're doing just as well typing. Seriously, if you have time, just go do an online typing tutorial and sign up for ExamSoft. You know, beg, borrow, or rent a laptop if you have to. You know, if you don't have one that's suitable. Do whatever you got to do in order to type the exam if at all possible, okay? So we, of course, recommend that you give separate sections by issues and sub-issues, okay? Now, if you've looked at some of these essay questions, they might already have 3 little calls of the question after them. If they have 2 or 3 calls of the question like this, then you know what your main sections are, right? Section 1 is going to answer this question, section 2 and section 3. But often you'll need to break it down further. So if more than one subsection is required to answer the question, then do separate headings for each little subsection. For example, imagine you're looking at a torts question and question 1 says, you know, what claims does defendant have against A, B, and C? 3 different potential, does plaintiff, sorry. What claims does plaintiff have against A, B, and C? 3 different potential defendants, right? So you will need to split that up, right? It'll be, well, here's the thing, you know, plaintiff's claims, you know, against A, you know, the store, you know, B, the motorist, you know, all sorts of terrible things happen, right? So you're going to break them down. We recommend even that you put your headings, your main headings in bold type, and that you underline your other headings, and that you leave space between the heading and the paragraph. Why all this white space? Because your headings are little road signs for your reader to tell her where she can go to find the information that she needs to give you points, which is what we want, right? We want her to give you points, okay? So yes, break it down into sections and subsections as needed. I know I'm scribbling a lot, so I'm erasing my scribblings. Also, I don't have lovely penmanship like some of you do, Mayron. So that's why we're using paragraph breaks throughout. Now, each issue or sub-issue is itself going to be 3 little paragraphs. Rule, you're going to write the issue either as a separate sentence, or I like to, if you want to write out the issue in the header, you can. You know, does Bob have a claim against, a claim for negligence against motorist? Question mark. Put that in bold. That's both your heading and your issue. It's beautiful. Then your next paragraph is your rule. Negligence entails blah, 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 right? And actually with negligence, that's a bad example because you might even break it down further into, the elements. But anyway, if you have an issue that, one distinct sub-issue, you're going to keep a separate little paragraph for the rule, the application, and yes, the conclusion. Again, why so many little white paragraphs? Just the white space makes it easier for your reader to read, and the rigidity of that format helps it, makes it easier for them to predict where the information is going to be, okay? Notice that this is not great writing. This is not beautiful writing. This is not something interesting that you would want to read. Again, it's not going to be interesting. Your reader is reading way too many of these for yours to be interesting. So split it up to make it very clear what your rule is, what your application is, and where your conclusion is. Notice that I said put the conclusion at the end. Now, some bar prep companies put the conclusion also at the beginning. Some people write successful answers with the conclusion at the beginning. We think it's a terrible idea. And here's why. You might be wrong. Maybe you knew the right rule and part of your analysis is taking you in the exact right direction, but you misunderstood or missed one little fact in that fact pattern. So whoop, your conclusion is wrong. You come to the wrong conclusion, the conclusion that the bar examiners did not intend. You got the right rule. Most of your application's correct. It's looking beautiful. You want points for that, right? You should get points for that either way, but I think your chances of getting those points are higher if you don't start the paragraph with a big red flag that says, wrong answer, I got this one wrong, look at this wrong answer. You don't want to flag it as a wrong answer. You want them to read the good stuff. And if you mess up somewhere along the way and come to the wrong conclusion, they'll figure that out when they get there. And your conclusion will be solidly stated at the end. So you don't want to lose those points for the stuff you did get right. So again, it's a lot of little paragraphs. It's very formulaic. It's not very engaging. It's dull, but yours is going to be dull no matter what, right? So just make it easy for that grader to find what they need to give you the points. Let me see, didn't I have anything else on this particular slide before we go into, next I'm going to be studying about, talking about how to study for the MEE, and I'm going to look at some Q&A right now. So again, questions about the MEE itself, throw them into Q&A and I will answer those. And other stuff, we've got people from BarMax very busily helping you all in chat. So sorry, you guys have put 80 things in chat and I only have to look at 11 Q&A, so I better not complain. Should we all attempt the California exam since it will be online? I think you should take the exam where you intend to study. Yeah, that's probably not what's going to meet people's needs. And we did have earlier, Gerald, we did have an earlier webinar about, dealing with some of the changes around COVID-19. How many days is the New York bar exam? So Henry, the structure of the UBE, including New York, is like this. Day one, you walk in and you do 6 essays, the MEE that we're covering now. You go to lunch, you come back, you do 2 performance tests, and we'll be talking about performance tests next week. Then day 2, you come in and you do the MBE, those 200 multiple choice questions. So it's a 2-day exam, and each day is split into a 3-hour block in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon. Of course, all kinds of administrative time, reading the rules, blah, 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 you know, all of that, but 6 hours each day of actual testing time. So 12 hours split over 2 days. That's the UBE. Let's see. So again, essays, anonymous attendee, I would really love it if somebody would help out anonymous attendee about, oh my gosh, failed by 1.1, that is ridiculous. No, don't use, that's a really tough one, anonymous. And it's because it's a specific situation, not just about the MEE. I'm going to resist the temptation to answer it now. But hopefully if someone can reach out to you, or you can reach out to BarMax if they don't get a hold of you through chat, you definitely don't need to be listening to lectures all over again. You can have some focused study that will help you to improve. But at the same time, you don't want to lose any of your progress either. What is the ideal number of months to do review for a foreign law graduate? You know, I think if some of the subjects are really, really unfamiliar and you're having trouble with them, US constitutional law, federal civil procedure, then for foreign law students, you know, you can give yourself more time. I have a student who is starting now for February because she knows that as a foreign law graduate who has no exposure to US law, other than, you know, looking at bar exam stuff, she's going to need more time. So it really kind of depends on you. I think there are foreign lawyers who could do it in, you know, the normal amount of time, but it would take an intense amount of work and focus. So, so Jesusa, it's really gonna depend on what, you know, what kind of, you know, volume of study works for you. There's no magic number. There is no typing speed required. And the formatting is super basic. I don't think there's autocorrect. So Uzoma, this is relevant to everyone. When you're typing and you will make typos, that's okay. Some typos is okay. Any one of us makes typos when we type. You want to watch out for blatant grammatical errors and things like that that make it look like you're not thinking clearly, or make it hard to follow your argument. But in terms of typing speed, again, Uzoma, it would be worth just doing some online typing course drills, whatever. Just teach yourself how to type a little faster. People who handwrite the exam do get it done, and handwriting is, most people handwrite at about 30, 32 words a minute. And, you know, if you're typing at 30, 40 words a minute, it's going to feel slow because there's going to be people like me near you going, and don't let that bother you, because if you can write a succinct, clear answer, even if you're a little slower, you'll do fine. Okay. But do get it to where you can, you know, type somewhat fluidly, because even if you have to write very succinct, short little paragraphs, it's better than trying to handwrite. Errant capitalizations, misspellings, all that is fine, Greg. I think I just answered that one as well for Greg, as well as Uzoma. You know, ExamSoft, is it easy to use? I'd been a handwriter in law school, but I'm going to type for the bar exam. I found it pretty easy to use. I was a late adopter of ExamSoft myself because I graduated from law school like when it was first just coming into being, and I was very suspicious because I was like, this thing's going to delete my answer in the middle. So I never used ExamSoft I don't think I used it at all in law school. Most of us still hand wrote then. And I probably hand wrote my first bar exams. So after that, when I did switch to ExamSoft, I did not find the transition difficult. I don't know if you know, guys, from my bio, I took 3 bar exams in 3 different states. I really don't recommend it. God bless the UBE that you people can do that now. And if you move, you don't, anyway. Do we have any system requirements? And please don't call it Chinese virus. I know somebody said that. I should have pointed that out. And I should have pointed that out. I was just kind of reading through system requirements. I don't know, but that is where you want to check your bar examiner's website, your state bar examiner's website, unless someone knows the system requirement for ExamSoft and can chime in chat. Overcoming your perfectionist tendencies to get through an answer on time. Wow. Okay. So my study method does emphasize thoroughness at first, but you're going to have to test yourself on time a little earlier than I'm about to recommend. Okay. Anonymous perfectionist. And you'll have to start doing some under time pressure and, you know, persuading yourself that a 5 is fine, a 5 is fine, a 5 is passing, right? And turn some in. If you're going to be doing BarMax, turn some in for review and, you know, turn in something you think is absolutely horrible. If it gets a 5, it's passing. You want it to be a 7 or an 8, sure. But if it gets a 5, it's passing. Your goal is to pass the bar. My philosophy is that the person who gets the highest score on a pass-fail exam has misordered their priorities. Seriously, don't you have a family, a hobby, anything? No, most of you don't have hobbies. Your hobby is studying for the bar. But come on, people love you. So don't get the highest score on a pass-fail exam. Right? So send in some essays for review, including a few that you do under time pressure to convince yourself that, yeah, you know, a 5 is ugly, but a 5 is a 5, right? It's passing. Can somebody explain the grading system scaled? Okay, yes. Each state does it differently. That's the explanation. So we've been talking a lot about New York because I have a lot of New York people on here. New York grades all the essays 20 to 80, and then they put it through this magic formula where the MPTs are weighted more than the MEEs because there's only 2 of them, but they're bigger, and they come up with a number that, you know, what you're aiming for to pass is 133, you know, so that's half of the 266. You'll get the other half from your MBE score. You're aiming for there. You could get lower if you get higher on the MBE. Each state does it differently, however. Some states go 1 through 6, so 4 is passing. If it's a 1 through 6 state, then 4 is passing. If it's New York, then 5 or a little above is passing. When we grade on BarMax, we go 1 through 10, and 5 is passing. So when you send it into BarMax, whatever your state is will translate it, you know, to a score of 5. And I'm talking about the 10 essays that are included for any student who buys the BarMax MBE program, or for people who purchase them a la carte through the website, the BarMax website, who purchase exam reviews. Oh my gosh. So Svanter has Svatanter. I'm sorry, I've slaughtered your name 3 different ways now, but it's such an important comment. So New York starts with the MPT and then the MEE in the afternoon on day 1. So day 1 is still writing, day 2 is still multiple choice, but it's the opposite of what I have seen. Interesting, thank you. Do I think more in-depth analysis is required in California? Yes, in general. Maybe it's not depth of analysis because the MEE wants you to analyze the heck out of those facts, but California wants you to show a broader understanding of the law. So I would say more breadth of analysis in California. What's the most effective practice to improve your MEE score? That's exactly what we're going to talk about next. Are there any good model answers? And Ingrid, yes, I'm talking about that in my next section. How would you, I'm talking about that in my next section. I love whoever, thank you, Claire, you're doing an amazing job. I'm assuming it's Claire. We're on a mind meld. Some states do allow appeals and some don't. Does word count matter? You know, it's interesting because some essays can be answered super succinctly and some require a lot of analysis. So there's no ideal word limit. You can look different types of questions, sometimes lend themselves to very succinct analysis, and other types of questions are more analysis. Javier, yes, on Thursday, I'll talk about the Texas bar exam as well as all of the other non-UBE, non-California states. Of course, next February, Texas will be a UBE state, but I know for this upcoming administration, you still have to do Texas. I will let you know that Texas is one of the bar exams that I passed, but it was many years ago. I can just give you some general advice. Greg thinks that ExamSoft is pretty friendly and the system requirements are typically less than the average computer. Any laptop produced in the last 3 years should be sufficient. Greg is now an honorary panelist when it comes to the ExamSoft. And I don't know about North Carolina grading, what scale they use. Sorry, I don't know that one. Offhand, I haven't worked with the North Carolina students, so come work with me and then I'll find out. All right, wow. You guys ask really on-point Q&A that I can just like answer it and not get too off track. So I appreciate your keeping me on track. This next section, I'll be talking about preparing for the MEE. And again, other questions about your specific situation, do reach out to us in chat because we have other really smart, awesome people at BarMax who are monitoring chat, since there are almost 200 of you and I have like one busy little brain in here. Preparing for the MEE, this should go without saying, use real MEE questions. Okay, we use real questions for the MBE, we use real questions for the MEE. Every question that's available, you get as part of your welcome packet. If you sign up for the BarMax UBE course, you click on you have to go to computer to the actual website and, under your profile, once you're in, then you download it. And if you have an old slow computer like my last one, you go get a cup of coffee and come back 15 minutes later, they're all downloaded. My current computer does zip files a lot faster. Yay. Anyway, but you use real MEE questions. How do we go about using these questions? I think of this as 3 different phases of study. Although for a perfectionist, I am recommending a little bit of blending, doing some speed writing earlier on, just so that you can get yourself used to it. For those with those perfectionist tendencies. But anyway, these are my 3 phases, right? In this phase, okay, you for the MBE subjects anyway. So write 2 to 3 practice essays for each MBE subject. Now you can then take that practice essay and submit it as one of your essays to review, or you can go look at the analysis provided by NCBE. These are not model answers written by students. This is just a sample one. This is Contracts, February 2017. These are written by the NCBE and they're provided to the states as point sheets, okay? Notice that if you go into the sections, they say, well, on this contracts question, oh, that's way too small, sorry. On this contracts question, the examinee should get, I'm expanding it now, there we go, should get 10% for noticing, that the UCC Article 2 applies to the sale of goods and that tomatoes are goods. Great. The next section was worth about 60% of the score. These are suggested guidelines. And all of this offer and acceptance stuff in here was worth about 60% of the score. And then if we look over here, we have revocation of an offer was worth 30% of the score. Okay, so this is a nice contracts formation question. Maybe you'll go do it February 2017. But I want you to notice, this is written by the NCBE. Sorry, my iPad has a little lag. I think probably a lot of people are on the internet in my neighborhood right now, but we'll get there. If you notice here, in like the first paragraph that's showing, I know it's kind of small, but I mean, there's a big long quotation from the restatement second of contracts, and then it quotes what case it's coming from. This is not a student answer, okay? So here's the student answer, or a part of one. I just grabbed a page, okay? This is part of a student's answer, okay? This is one of the ones. Now you do have access to some of these, and I'm going to tell you where. Within BarMax, when you download your welcome packet, you have sample answers for the most recent years. If you look at it by year, I see it's all wonky on the screen. I don't know. There we go. If you look at it by year, the most recent years, 2016, 17, 18, 19, you have both the point sheets from the NCBE and actual sample answers from examinees. New York and Minnesota both put these on their bar examiner websites. So look, even if you're not buying BarMax, you can go to Minnesota and you can go to New York and download those. You should buy BarMax anyway. You're getting all this value. Look, but you'll get them all, and you'll get them all packaged together with the questions and nice and easy to find. You'll get the NCBE analysis and a student sample answer for those most recent years in the welcome packet. Now, even these, look, this is the one that the state of New York picked to say, oh, here's our sample answer. We don't know that this person didn't spend 50 minutes on this essay and never even make it to question 6, right? This was actually question 1 on the February 2017 MEE. So we don't even know that this person could reasonably produce this in 30 minutes. We just know that this person produced this beautiful essay on the exam. And again, don't get the high score on a pass-fail test. Do well, but don't let the NCBE point sheets or these answers intimidate you. Now, this person started with a conclusion. Obviously, it didn't hurt them because, hello, it was right. But you don't start with the conclusion just in case you came to the wrong conclusion. We have a nice rule. Generally, offers are freely revocable, an option, and then we have this. Here, there was no such option. So this is our rule. I'm sorry, I should really be doing this in a pen and not a highlighter. Let's try that again. Okay, this part here is our rule. And this part here is our application. We would make it even easier for our reader by putting a little paragraph break right here between the rule and the application. Okay, but you know, but this should show you what an excellent exam answer looks like. Excellent. An exam answer does not look like this. Okay, notice. Now I'm going to tell you how to use these, right? These point sheets, these things that are not actually model exam answers from examinees. They're models in that they teach you the law. Okay, here's how to use them. You're going to write your practice essay, okay? And then you're going to go back to that analysis, skip all that stuff at the beginning, the questions posed, even the summary. You don't need the summary. You need the rules and the application of those rules to the facts, right? So I'm sorry, I keep jumping back and forth, which my iPad is not cooperating with, but that's where my brain is right now. So let's look at that point too. You know, here we have, you know, some information about offers, and here, like a lot more about offers, right? So these are things that are in the point sheet. Your grader could give you points for saying one of these, Willingness to enter into a bargain, defining the offer, and then revoking the offer, promises to hold offers open, and then firm offer rule of the UCC. So all of this yellow stuff is nice rules. When we're studying, after we've done the essay ourselves, we're going to go read these rules and say, oh, okay, this is, did I get it right? Did I understand the rule? Did I apply the correct rule? And then, boy, oh boy, here, the gardener is an amateur gardener with no business experience who's never sold tomatoes. I'm really giving this one away, I know. Do it later, okay, after you've forgotten all about me. Okay, it goes into the facts. Here, and again, we like that. We like that application begins with the word here, because it's a really, easy way to remember or to signal to your reader that, okay, now I'm getting to the application, and make sure you really dig in and you use all of those applicable facts. Okay. So let's say you've done a bunch of these essays and you've taken your time, just like with the MBE, it's okay. It's okay at the beginning to look up the rule. If you haven't memorized them yet, look them up, right? But once you know your rules in an area, you can start doing some under time pressure. At this point, at the beginning of your study, I would say submit some so that we, the graders and here at BarMax can review them and let you know if you're off track in anything. Make sure you get that formatting down. We would like you to submit 1 or 2 of these early. Submit them this week. Why not, right? We're available. We'll get them back to you quickly. If you wait to submit until the week before the bar exam, we might be done grading by then. Like we have more to grade than we did. No, we did. We kept up with it. UBE, we kept up with it, but it gets to be a lot. Like, write to us now, send us your things, and more importantly, not just because you get your feedback quickly, but because you can use your feedback the whole time. So let's see. And then, okay, so you've submitted for feedback. I showed you the model, or the point sheet. Now, when you've done enough of those, let's say you're getting to where you're reviewing your MBE subjects and you're starting to study the multi-state essay exam subjects, like your corporations, your wills and trusts. You start feeling like writing out all these essays is getting really tedious. And I know how to do it. I know how to format my essay. My BarMax people have given me good feedback. I don't need to keep writing essays. So instead of spending 30 minutes writing a whole essay, just take 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, read the question and take some notes. You're going to read the fact pattern. You're going to note what is being tested, okay? Just jot down what are the issues, maybe highlight what are the facts that lead to the conclusion, and just write a quick note to yourself, like what's the conclusion for each issue, and highlight or underline all of the facts that you think really matter that lead to that conclusion. You do that just reading it, making a quick outline of your answer or taking notes on it. You do that in 5 or 10 minutes, and then you go read the NCBE analysis, skipping all the stuff at the beginning and getting down to where the points are so that you can find out, did I get the right rule? Did I apply it correctly? So do that. And that way, that method, that 10 minutes to read and make notes, and then a few more minutes, however long you need to review that answer, just the meaty parts, skip all the introductory stuff. Doing that, you're going to be able to, in the same amount of time, go through many more essays. And the more essays you go through, the more fact patterns you have now to hang those rules on in your head. You'll remember, oh, this is like the tomato guy, or whatever, right? Fact patterns from real questions test issues that are likely to be tested again. So if you didn't take secure transactions in law school or don't know it, then do a lot of questions in secure transactions. Just take those notes, read the analysis. Same for whatever your area of weakness is. I also recommend that everyone do a lot of civil procedure. The reason why is not that you're necessarily going to get a civil procedure essay, but you are going to get 25 multiple choice questions, and we have so few practice multiple choice questions to work from for the MBE that I really recommend that you use this method of read, take notes, then review the analysis provided by NCBE in order to study lots of civil procedure questions, because they're complex, they're difficult, some of those Civ Pro essays, but they test issues that may come up on multiple choice. We had last summer, there was a civil procedure question that tripped a lot of people up because it was about class action jurisdictions, which is class action jurisdiction. The Class Action Fairness Act provides a totally different basis for jurisdiction than what we're used to thinking federal question, diversity jurisdiction, the main ways to get into federal court. Well, Class Action Fairness Act is another one. They tested it. They did an essay on it. Yeah, it's in our outline, but we didn't ever see a multiple choice question on it because we have so few multiple choice questions. Well, if you go through that essay from July of 19 and review it and review the NCBE analysis, and they do ask you a question about it in multiple choice, you'll recognize it and you might get it right. So the second phase of your study is where you're doing the 10-minute reviews and then reading the NCBE analysis. This is going to deepen your understanding of the law and how it applies on the test. And by the way, if you have the BarMax calendar, sometimes people get confused when we say outline an essay. That's all I mean. Just read it, take some quick notes, then go look at the answer. Finally, the final phase is where you are timing yourself. First, you'll be doing some real questions timed, just like while you're studying, family law. You'll just give yourself a family law question and do it timed for practice, or while you're reviewing real property. But then you'll take some real practice tests where you force yourself to sit and write for 3 hours in a row. It takes a lot of discipline, but the exam itself is a test of endurance in addition to everything else. I have a peer, somewhat around my age, who after not having taken a bar exam since we both took our first many years ago together, she was texting me. She was all nervous. She was going to take the New York bar exam. She passed. And she said, I think the hardest thing about this at my age is going to be sitting still in a chair for 7 hours. It's not funny. It's true. It's hard. It's hard to sit still. So even just forcing yourself to sit still, take some real practice tests. That does need to be part of your study plan. All right. Now, I don't even know what time it is. Let me see. 7:10. All right. Just a little over an hour and I got through my main material. I do have an example that we can walk through, but of course, I'm going to look at the Q&A first and see how we're doing here. I don't know about Texas scoring right now. Actually, even on Thursday, I'm going to focus on preparation and not on scoring. LaShawn tells us that North Carolina grades 1 through 6. So if anybody needs to know that, there you go. On the MEE, are all of the questions compulsory? In other words, if they give you 6 questions, do you have to answer all 6? Yes, you don't get to choose. However, your state, if you're not in a UBE state, your state may say, we'll test these 4 because we want to use, we use state materials. Like, for example, South Dakota. I probably have nobody from South Dakota, but if I do, shout out, right? South Dakota will use 5 MEE essays, and then instead of the 6th essay, there's an essay on federal Indian law. Good thing to know. Certainly where I used to live in Oklahoma, it's a good thing to know, and it's a good thing to know in South Dakota to know a little bit of federal Indian law. So that South Dakota exam is just the UBE -1 essay plus federal Indian law. But whatever questions you get, you do need to answer them all. Let's see. Would it be a good use of prior MEEs to create black letter law outlines? Okay, so I'm all about like expanding outlines based on questions and things I learn. So I'm with you there, Swatantra. And what I do is, what I do recommend is for people who like to write in outlines, is to take your BarMax outline and then add anything to it that's missing. But there won't be a lot missing on the frequently tested subjects, or write like a little explanation for yourself why it's there. Our outlines are pretty to the point, but they get all of the main issues that have been tested. Every now and then, you're going to read the NCB analysis, and there's going to be 5 or 10% at the end for some obscure doctrine that even I don't remember, right? Some obscure arcane doctrine. If it's 5 or 10%, don't worry about getting that in your outline. If that's the only place you've seen it, it's probably the only place you ever will see it. If you've reviewed enough essays and that's the only time it came up and it's some really academic thing, good for them. Go for the other 9 points, okay? So anonymous, who does well on the MBE, not so well on the MEE. Yes, it is. Only 2 states require a minimum MBE score, minimum essay score to pass, and they're not, Kentucky and something else, but neither one of them is hang on, I gotta go for the throat coat. Two-fisted drinker. Neither one of those is an MEE state. So here's what you would do in the other states, anonymous, is if you are doing much, much better on the MBE, like let's say you got, 143 on the MBE, then yes, you can miss a few points on the MEE and still do fine. You have to add your 2 scores up to get to your magic number, which, New York, 266, some other jurisdictions, 272, 280 for Alaska. Good on you, Alaska. Is the UBE 2 days or 3? It's a 2-day exam, Marion. Let's see. Oh gosh, you guys are so quick. Yeah, Anna Kraft, same thing. High score on MBE, high score on MEE, low on MBE, still pass. Yes, the goal is to get to that magic number, no matter which way you add them up. Okay, so you want to be aiming, to hit at least passing in both of them. But if you know that you're a lot higher on one, then that's going to buy you some wiggle room for sure. Oh, wow. Walking you through the MEE features on the app. Okay, so the desktop version and the app are a little different. And of course, I want to show off BarMax features. Like, why would I not want to show off BarMax? I love it. Here I am, right? Except for I never use this part because I always do it on the desktop. So here I am jumping into my BarMax app. And yeah, you can see here I was talking about conspiracy with somebody who had a question. Okay. When you are looking at a computer, like the website online, you actually get that welcome packet where you can download PDFs of everything, right? So the document I showed you a minute ago, showing that NCBE analysis, that was just ripped straight out of our welcome packet. That's what it looks like if you're doing it on a computer. If you're doing it on the app and you want to practice essays, okay, you have all the essays here by type, or you can have them by year, okay? So here we go. Let's find our tomatoes essay. Here we go. Our professional cook had a conversation with her neighbor, an amateur gardener with no business experience. So the features we have here are just the ability to change the size of the type if we need it. And I think there's an ability to highlight. So if I need to, I can, right? No business experience. This means she's not a merchant, right? So that's of interest to me. So as I go through, I might be taking notes separately. I probably would have read the question first, by the way. Is the gardener bound? Because that is a do we have a contract question, right? So I should have started there so I know what I'm looking for. Is the gardener bound? Anyway, that is what it would look like on the app. You can also do a word search if you can say, oh, wasn't there a question about, oh, no, this is the wrong way, but you can do a word search if you want. Like when I'm in contracts essays, for example, you see if this works. I haven't tried this, so we'll see if I fall off my tightrope, right? There is a word search feature. And yeah, so I went knives. Why did I look for the word knives? Because I know this is a terrific question on the statute of frauds. And I'm like, man, I want that statute of frauds question. And I remember that it was about a chef buying knives. So there you go. Yeah, so thank you. Thank you for saying it's cool. I think it's cool. I love it. Anyway, like working for BarMax. I've been tutoring more. Tutoring's really, really fun. Really fun. I love seeing people, you know, the light bulbs. You guys, I see your Q&A, but I don't see any eyes with the light bulbs. Does DC require a minimum score on each? No, just hit your magic number. So thank you for your wonderful comments. I see there's a lot more comments and questions in chat, and I hope my colleagues are answering that well. So that's the main stuff. But like I said, I did have an example handy on my sleeve. This is a civil procedure question. So what do you say we look at it together? I do recommend starting by reading the call of the question and then reading the facts and annotating like we talked about. Like I was just showing you there, oh, gee, amateur gardener, that's going to matter in a contracts question. And then reading the questions again. Why? Because you have to answer the question asked. This one was so tricky. I want to show you the calls of the question of the July 2009 civil procedure question. There were all these facts. It was pretty short, so we're going to look at those facts. People getting struck by falling panes of glass. Sounds fun. But your questions were, what must Glasgow do to remove the case from state to federal court? Number two, if the case is removed to the federal court, do the federal rules of civil procedure permit the separate claims of Anne and Bill to remain joined in a single lawsuit? Explain. And if Anne's and Bill's claims remain joined, will the federal court have jurisdiction over this case? Now, I've read this question before, so I knew what to highlight, right? What's being tested? Removal, joinder, and jurisdiction. Question 3 is the jurisdiction question. A lot of students, this was actually one of the more straightforward civil procedure questions. I'm not gonna lie, most of them are harder than this. But a lot of students, everyone I tutor that I assign this to, you know, now you can submit essays through BarMax, but I used to, you know, tutor privately, right? And I liked assigning this question because it covers some good basic concepts in civil procedure that are tested a lot. There was a joinder question in February. Anyway, but people got tripped up on organization. Why? Because they go, oh, can they remove it? Well, let me see, does the court have jurisdiction? And what do? They go off to the races, writing all about jurisdiction here. And then they get here and they go, well, what do I say here? How do I organize this? And, you know, whatever. I'm sure that people got points who organized it, you know, sideways, but you would end up being flustered if you went about it that way. You wouldn't have made that mistake if you really very closely read the question. What must Glasgow do? This part of the question was just asking, what's the process? It wasn't asking the substance. It wasn't asking the merits of removing this case. It was simply asking, what's the process? The process for removing a case is filing a notice of removal in the federal court. You append all of the, items that are on the docket in the state court case so far, and the complaint, anything else that's been filed on the docket, and you send a copy to all the parties in the case. That's it. That was worth 10 to 20% of the answer. Imagine if you spent a lot of time there and you didn't save enough time for question 3. Question 2 was the joinder question. Question 3 was recommended worth 45 to 55% of the question. Half your points would come from the jurisdiction issues in this one. Okay, so be sure you read all of the questions and kind of map out where you're going to go. Do that quick little outline before you start writing. Now, someone did ask, how much time in this 30 minutes? You want to spend, I mean, it depends how fast you read, right? But spend about 5 minutes reading and making sure you have an outline. Okay, no more than 10, maybe 10, might be 10. Some of them are complicated, but then write. And if you have an outline and you know exactly which rule to put where, then you'll write more quickly. Again, slow typist, give yourself more time. Sorry, I hit my iPad and it went flying. It's still here. So yeah, so that's my pitch for reading the questions carefully, because all question 1 is asking is process, what to do. Okay, then the next thing you do is you read these facts. And since this is only 4 paragraphs and we're walking through this example together, let's go ahead and read it. And man, I almost wish I could call on somebody because I'm tired, but we'll read it together. Ann and Bill, both citizens of State X, were walking by a construction site in State X when an overhead crane, by the way, somebody's citizenship is always relevant, right? When there's a jurisdiction question, so I might as well highlight it. Sorry, got distracted. They were walking by a construction site in State X when an overhead crane dropped a load of plate glass windows on the sidewalk near them. That sounds terrifying. The windows shattered when they hit the pavement, and both Ann and Bill were struck by flying glass. Ann's injuries were severe. She incurred more than $450,000 in medical expenses. Bill suffered only minor injuries and had medical bills of $500. Okay, why am I highlighting the numbers? Because I'm thinking jurisdiction, right? At the time of the accident, the windows were being installed in a new skyscraper by Glasgow Inc., a statewide corporation. Dun, 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 dun. We have diversity with its principal place of business in statewide. Ooh, I'm going to need to explain the 2 states of citizenship of statewide, aren't I? Yes, you are. I mean, of Glasgow, it's both statewide, but there's 2 ways that a corporation can have citizenship: state of incorporation and principal place of business. So you're going to want to show off that you know that, and here are the facts that you'll use. So I highlighted those facts. We remember to use them, even though it's very obvious that Glasgow is statewide for diversity purposes. The crane operator was a Glasgow employee, and the crane was owned by Glasgow. A subsequent investigation concluded that the accident was due to crane operator error and improper crane maintenance. Okay, so we are looking for a good solid, tort claim here, a good solid negligence claim against Glasgow. Okay, so this is all bad for Glasgow. Ann and Bill have joined as plaintiffs. Okay, this is procedurally where we're at, and filed a suit against Glasgow in a state trial court. So this is where we started. This is where this removal question comes in. in state X. Ann is seeking more than $1 million in damages, and Bill is seeking 5,000. These are such important numbers. This is A, and this is B, right? Ann, Bill. You are an associate at a law firm that has been retained by Glasgow. Well, isn't that nice? The partner in charge of the case wants to remove the lawsuit from state to federal court. She has asked. And then these 3 questions. So question 1, we'll write about just the process, okay? The notice of removal. Okay, question 2, we will write about joinder. We're not going to take the time to do that now, but go study section 5 of the BarMax civil procedure stuff and do lots of questions on it because it's a heavily tested area, okay? And now, if Ann's and Bill's claims remain joined, will the federal court have jurisdiction over the case? Before we launch into writing, okay, we're at the point where we do our very rough outline. And this is where we need to think, do I need to break something into sub-issues in order to fully answer the question? Let's look at that question 3 again. We're going to focus on the jurisdiction part of this essay, mostly because most of you know the law. You know, some of you know all the law, but you're early on in your studying. So I thought jurisdiction would be a good place to start, although it's not the only thing tested in civil procedure. Okay, you want to know that joinder stuff and the other stuff. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Collateral estoppel, baby. Anyway, if Ann's and Bill's claims remain joined, will the federal court have jurisdiction over the case? Okay. Well, we can say, Ann's asking for more than $1 million. There are citizens of different states. There's diversity of jurisdiction. We're good. Clink. We're missing all kinds of points, right? We're missing all kinds of points. First of all, we didn't talk about Bill. Bill's claim is only worth $5,000. He's only asking for $5,000. Does he belong in federal court? Okay. And how do we know that Glasgow is a citizen of state Y? We have to explain that bit, don't we? Just like I did up above about, you know, the state of incorporation and the state, right? So to remember to get all that in there, we are going to want to outline this a little bit. So we're going to say, okay, does the federal court have jurisdiction over Ann's claim? Does the federal court have jurisdiction over Bill's claim? Okay, because already it's saying, does it have jurisdiction over the case? But for the purposes of, well, for the purposes of anything, but definitely in federal civil procedure, we have cases that are comprised of claims, right? And the court needs to have jurisdiction over all the claims. Okay, these are separate claims. We need to consider them separately. So Ann, you know, this is where we write out our rule, you know, you know, well, this is our outline right here. So we're just outlining. We're going to say, okay, diversity, you know, she's a citizen of state X, the Y, and here we want to put in our outline that we're going to explain. You know, we're going to have a separate paragraph to explain the citizenship of the corporation. Okay. All right. And then greater than $1 million. Okay. So it's greater than 75K, right? Which, you know, is the amount in controversy required for a federal diversity action. So you're going to have Ann's claim covered this way, but in your outline, you're giving yourself a little note that you need to cover all of these issues, right? And that you're going to break it down first by giving the rule for diversity jurisdiction, explaining Ann's, that Ann who, because what does it tell us in the facts? It says that she's a citizen of state X. So we can just say, Ann is a citizen of state X, and then we'll say, you know, Glasgow, you know, we want to say that Glasgow is a citizen of state Y, but first we have to give, you know, we'll need a paragraph to say, A corporation is a citizen of the state where it's incorporated and the state where its principal place of business. For Glasgow, both of those are statewide. Therefore, Glasgow's a citizen is statewide. Then we'll apply the rest of the rule, the $1 million, all that, right? So we're going to march through it so that we don't leave out any points. Like, don't leave out that place of business stuff. Get a point for that, right? And so that we get to the correct answer, which is the court has jurisdiction over Ann's claim. Bill's claim is more complicated, right? But because his is only $5,000, you know, hey, dollars, not network, 5G. I'm sorry, you guys are. Okay, his is only $5,000. How's he going to get into federal court on supplemental jurisdiction? And again, you can just write, oh, okay, the court will have supplemental jurisdiction over Bill's claim, and you're missing all kinds of points. There's all sorts of points in here. Remember, this is 50% of this question. There are points available for your application and analysis. First, you would go into why he does not have diversity jurisdiction, you know, or why the court does not have diversity jurisdiction over Bill's claim. And then, so that'll be a little section, and then you'll have your main section, and you will rack the heck out of this. You know, it'll be supplemental jurisdiction is your issue. And your rule is, you know, where a federal court has originalist jurisdiction over one claim in a case, then the court may, you know, may extend supplemental jurisdiction over a claim, you know, or that arises out of the same transaction or occurrence. Or I'm sorry, the common nucleus of operative fact. I should at least give you the right rule, yeah? Yeah, so, right, so you want to show that these are part of the same case and controversy, that they arise from a common nucleus of operative fact, and you'll explain that. You'll go through, you'll apply it. You'll say, well, here, Ann and Bill were both walking down the sidewalk at the same time. The same load of plate glass windows hit the ground, caused injuries to both of them. So it's the same set of facts. You know, they share the same common nucleus of operative fact, and therefore the court may extend supplemental jurisdiction over the second claim. All right, so you see how just by outlining it here in a way that you'll remember, you're going to say case or controversy, same case or controversy, you know, same fact, the common nucleus of operative fact. If I know the rule and I write it like this, that's fine. My outline is just for me, for my eyes only, except for I just showed it to you. So when I say outline, I don't mean write out the rule beautifully or anything like that. I mean something that you can do in 5 minutes on the test. Okay, maybe 10. So this is your outline for section 3. Okay, so your entire reading, annotating, outlining should be no more than 10 minutes. Greg, I'm one of the tutors. There are lots of tutors, but I have been tutoring more lately. People are getting ready for these upcoming exams. It's fun. It's good stuff. Anyway, so that is our outlining step, okay? And then, so when you're outlining, you're breaking it into sub-issues if appropriate. I've kind of lost my notes, which, you know, who needs notes? Yeah, anyway, let's see, I'm a few pages later than this. Anyway, so that's it. And then you write and you format your sections with section headers. Again, we like those to be in bold type so they stand out, like, hi, this is what this section will be about. And then issue rule, application, use every fact, apply every little fact that you can, and conclusion. I also have some advice about facts that lead to wrong answers, right? Because sometimes there'll be facts that are thrown in there that if you weren't a well-educated, you know, soon-to-be lawyer, you would think, oh yeah, that's a good argument, right? But their facts are in there, so they want you to address them, right? Even if it's a losing argument. So here's what you do with losing argument facts. You set up the rule, you set up the application, and then you say, loser could argue that, However, this argument would fail because, and then give the counter argument to the bad fact argument. I hope that makes sense. Because a lot of times you'll write your essay and then you'll go back and you'll be like, oh, I never dealt with that sentence or paragraph with those random facts in it. I didn't put it in there because if I followed that trail, it would lead to a wrong answer. So say so. Show that you understood why those facts would lead to a wrong answer by giving the counter argument and then coming back and landing on the argument that you think is correct. Leads me to one more tip about, oh yeah, we did all this. This is where I was supposed to be doing my scribbling. It's okay. Yeah, this leads me to one more tip about coming to a conclusion. Sometimes the MEE will ask a question that is like a hairline split down the middle, or depends on the jurisdiction, right? So you'll write some states this, some states that, or you'll say, so-and-so could argue this, and the other person could argue that. You want to come to a conclusion either way. You want to give well-reasoned arguments for both sides and come to a conclusion either way. There are questions where the point sheets say, basically, the answer doesn't matter. Okay, they don't say the answer doesn't matter. They say, applicants should be given credit for a well-reasoned analysis either way, or something like that. Should be given credit. Applicants should be given credit for a well-reasoned analysis. So it doesn't mean you can just go, well, could be this, could be that, and walk away. You have to state a conclusion, but you'll get points whichever conclusion it is. And you'll get the most points if you've covered all of the arguments and counter arguments clearly, right? So start with the one that you think's the winner, give the counter argument, and then shoot it down and come to a conclusion, or even say, however, it's more likely that a court would side with Sally, right? Let's see. So we've done all this. Oh yeah, I put a slide about that. So deal with the facts that suggest a losing argument and review the facts. If you have a minute, review, make sure you didn't leave anything out, because really application, that's where, and, analyzing like how the rule, how those facts might change the outcome or might, meet the elements of the rule. That's where the money is, right? Or the points, which is the same thing at this point. So that's it. That's my main stuff for today. Let me see about my Q&A. Here we go. I got it. Does Mass use a 1 to 7 score for essays? I don't know. I don't know the scoring for most states. How much detail should we get when answering questions? Okay, so Anna, I've just told you we should do a lot of detail. However, your question asks, should we talk about a separate issue? If they ask about subject matter jurisdiction, should we talk about personal jurisdiction? Well, that's a separate legal issue. So the answer there is no. Just give every detail you can about subject matter jurisdiction. Would you recommend we review the MEE questions from the most recent years first? Well, okay, here's what I've done. In the BarMax app, we've gone through and on the calendar and sort of picked ones that are representative of frequently tested issues. And frankly, we've picked questions that aren't too hairy, because we think while you're first working on doctrines, you shouldn't be doing the hairiest questions, the most complex questions. You should be doing the ones that kind of give you the lay of the land. So we think if you have the BarMax calendar, you should do those first, and then yes, work your way backwards. Don't, I teach from stuff maybe 2008 to the present. you know, if you find it helpful to look at further past exams, you can, but really, yes, the more recent are more helpful in terms of kind of how they lay them out. But all of these last, you know, 10, 12 years will be helpful in terms of the issues they like to test. One caveat, old MEE tests may have a commercial paper, negotiable instruments question, no longer relevant, okay? Old tests may have that subject, which is no longer tested. And this is more important, old tests may have an analysis attached to it that has outdated law. Some of the federal rules of civil procedure have changed even recently. A temporary restraining order is good for 14 days, up to 14 days, not 10 in federal court, okay? And so, and things like that, you'll read, or deadlines that have changed, you'll read, you might get confused if you're in really, really old essays. In terms of testing deadlines, yes, Greg, they test them. They test them in multiple choice. So you do need to know, you know, when something needs to be filed by, right? Is this a typical format of a bar exam question? Well, that was one that's a little older, and the ones that I was showing earlier from the BarMax app, you know, this, oh yeah, this is a great question, guys. Go do this. Go do this question. Yeah. Ooh, I didn't talk about this kind of question. Anyway, here's one where they only give one call of the question. This is a very recent constitutional law question. And the call of the question is, which provisions, if any, of the Green Energy Act unconstitutionally burden or discriminate against interstate commerce? You're going to notice that the act has Section 1, Section 2, and Section 3. So now you know how to break up your essay. Even though there's just one call of the question, you're going to have Section 1 about Section 1 of the act, Section 2 about, and so on, okay? Here is another more recent one. This one has 2 questions. So yeah, these are reflective of what the exam looks like today. And again, you get them all through BarMax, all of the questions that have been tested since they had the MEE. Although I do think the more recent years, by which I mean the most recent decade or so, are the most useful personally. Secure transactions has also changed. Don't go too far back in that. Some of the law changed. I mean, we have really, really old questions, and they like rewrote Article 9 in 2001, 2000, something like that. Anyway, can I have an email? Oh, no, that's in chat. I'm not taking that one. You guys take that one. So Greg, I'm hoping that answered your question that yes, we do need to know deadlines, the typical length of fact patterns. Well, you were seeing that some of them on the screen, they're, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs sometimes, do all facts have a home in a better answer? Yes, I think so. I don't think this is true for state essays. State essays throw random facts in there sometimes, but that's a great question, Greg. I think the facts are worth mentioning, even if they lead to a bad argument, you want to say why, right? So, I mean, the fact that it's Tuesday, probably not, but there are so many facts that will matter. The fact, facts that go to whether or not a party would tend to have knowledge of a situation where mens rea or misrepresentation are at play, right? Where you have an issue where what's going on in a party's head matters. Then yeah, even any fact that would indicate that that person did or didn't have knowledge, you want to show that you see the significance of those facts. So I think MEE does not include a lot of extraneous facts. Your job is to identify, the issues that are being tested and get to the right answer, right? And, and then explain why that bad fact doesn't, actually lead to a contrary result. Okay, Bernard, you came in late. That's okay. This has been long. Must a candidate cite laws and cases when answering questions? No and no. The entire exam is closed book. That's a good question. The entire exam is closed book. You can't use anything at all, and you don't have to cite laws and cases. If we go back, I showed a sample earlier, so when you watch this later, but I did show, oh, it was over here somewhere. I showed a sample student answer, and at one point it said, under the UCC. Take a look at this. Bernard, this is for you. Under the UCC. It doesn't say what section of the UCC, you don't need to know that, but because this is a contract for a sale of goods, you can say, under the federal rules of civil procedure. You don't know what rule, it doesn't matter. Just get the rule right, state it right. You know what I mean? Victoria, there are not a lot of crossover questions. I wouldn't even say they appear on every exam, but be prepared because it could happen. And like I said, sometimes the other topic will get kind of shoehorned in to just be a small part of another fact pattern. Are fact patterns repeated from one year to the next? No, not the same fact pattern, Risarta, but the same issues. The same issues. Like we have a couple of contracts essays that are about, did this party effectively like repudiate or, you know, retract their repudiation, like that kind of, oh, they love that. They love all that. So yeah, issues will be tested over and over, but fact patterns, no. Okay. Can we see the grading sheet again, please? Yes. This was the one for that tomatoes. This was the point sheet for the tomatoes question. So your grader does not have to follow this, right? Like your grader works for your state. That's important to notice. Your grader works for your state's bar. Doing it as a side thing on, you know, in addition to practicing law or whatever else she does. Usually they're kind of some sort of leader in that field of law. Yeah, my colleague was well respected. But, you know, not so much of a leader that they wouldn't take a little side job. You know, and also it's service, they're serving the state bar, right? So anyway, they look at this and they decide, you know, like this is provided so that they can see what law would apply in a variety of jurisdictions. Okay, does BarMax just offer MEE and MPT help? Tamara or Tamara, I'm not sure which it is. So one or the other, Ms. Gordon. Let me take you back here and show you what we offer. We're gonna have a webinar, first of all, on Thursday for people who are in other jurisdictions. So that's free. That's like today, it's me talking a lot, but I have specific advice for different jurisdictions. For some people, it's going to be beneficial to take the UBE course because your state's exam is so close to the UBE. And for others, we do have an MBE course. I'm gonna show that right now. We do have a BarMax MBE course, and we'll talk on Thursday about how you might supplement that with materials from your state if it turns out that, you know, BarMax UBE and BarMax California are not the best for you. Each course, like these two comprehensive courses, come with this sort of stuff. 10 free essay critiques, lots and lots of real practice essays, flashcards, which are even being updated, lifetime access. That's something that is really different, and I forget to mention that, but if you sign up for BarMax now and decide to take the bar exam in February or next summer, or, you know, goodness forbid you don't pass, you still have our materials, you still have access to, you know, support, and we're here for you. You know, you don't have to pay for it all over again. I know some of our competitors think that they're being kind to give you a discount. the second time around. We keep you around until you pass, okay? Or until you pass in as many jurisdictions as you want to. There are people that have used BarMax to pass in more than one jurisdiction. They only have to buy it once. I don't know, we're kind of generous that way. We also have some tutoring available. You can check in. Sometimes people just like need to get a couple things on straight. You can check in and do an hour. There's nothing wrong with just doing an hour of tutoring. Or you can buy a package. If you think you want more than 30 hours of tutoring, just get in touch, call BarMax or get in touch through chat, because sometimes we'll just tailor to what, people want or need, if you're to your specific situation. But seriously, for some people, even just a couple of hours of tutoring. I have a student who failed the New York bar and then, came to us, and I tutored her for just a few hours, but she used all the BarMax UBE stuff. And I got an email from her because, the New York results just came out, that she got a 288. That was more than a 20-point improvement. And I really only met with her for a few hours, but she did a lot of work on her own. She was working hard, but she would check in with me when she, needed that additional help. So that's an option, or any of these other packages are options. Oh, I circled where look at it. All the other online, we have these testimonials. We throw some of those up on the screen on Thursday. Even people from Florida and states like that who've used BarMax materials, for as part of their bar prep with great success. So yeah, so buy BarMax. And whether you buy BarMax or not, come on Thursday if you're in a non-California, non-UBE state. I see a couple more quick Q&A. So I've answered that. I've shown you what we offer. Does BarMax provide point sheets for all essays? Greg, yes, absolutely, all of them. Rosalind, thank you. You're welcome, Rosalind, and everyone else. Oh, yes. Okay, so Anonymous, about the MBE, go watch my webinar, okay? It's recorded and it went long, so, make popcorn. But every MBE question in BarMax is a real prior MBE question, okay? No fakey jakies, okay? There aren't that many civil procedure questions, but that's because it's only been on the exam, on the multiple choice exam, since 2015, so they haven't released many. NCB is very stingy. They really love their exam security, and they don't release a lot of past questions. What does it mean that an average score on the MEE is 4? Okay, so it depends on your state, Maggie. I'm thinking your state may grade either out of a 10 or out of a 6. A lot of states grade out of 6. Like, for example, I think Colorado recently had results, and a 4 out of 6 would be an excellent answer. So it depends on your state. Excellent, very good passing answer, very clear, solid pass would be a 4 if your state uses a 6 point. Now, if you're in a state that uses a 10 point, a 4 is a little below passing, so you want to improve on that. So as far as relation to your total score, the MEE comprises 30% of the uniform bar exam. So if you're in New York or another UBE state, 30% will be on these essays. 20% will be the performance test, and 50% will be the MBE, the multi-state bar exam multiple choice. Okay, so this is what we're doing Thursday. We're done with all of this today. You guys have been great. You've asked really good on-point questions, and you've helped me to answer some of them. So thank you, those of you who've done that. And, come back. Oh, another thing BarMax has is office hours. Okay, so you'll see me with slightly fewer participants than this. Periodically, me, Mehran, the other instructors, we do hold office hours periodically. through, when we get close to bar prep season. So you're really not on your own, even though it's an all online portal, you're not entirely on your own in doing this, okay? 100% socially distant, #1 bar prep app, okay? And with that, I wish you all stay safe and good night.